Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Stashew, and I am joined by two people who, I guess at this point, we're like a podcasting trio. We don't have our own podcast, but when the three of us get together, it is the cinematic blind spot. I'm talking Mrs. Heather Drain.
Hello, everybody.
And host of the Projection Booth podcast. This man needs no introduction, so I'm not going to give him one.
All right. Do you have any cobs of corn, at least?
Oh, my God. No cobs of corn. I can't eat corn anymore. Mother of God. So,
I eat it with relish.
Oh, shit. I bet you do.
Nobody's going to be going to the Golden Corral after this episode.
I would hope no one was going to Golden Corral beforehand, but definitely not anymore.
Please, God. Just avoid it, especially now.
On this episode of the Culture Cast, we are finishing Sexploitation Spring with a look at Michael Findlay's The Ultimate Degenerate.
That night, I wandered around Times Square, wondering whether I should go through with it. If I hadn't been high in grass, I probably would have said to hell with it. But I was sick of this stinking town and all the garbage, human and otherwise, that littered the streets. I had to get away and get away fast. And anyway, I needed sex. And I needed it my way. I was hoping that this guy Spencer could provide it somehow. I didn't know then that I was heading for a cesspool far worse than anything I had known. My mind was made up. I knew that in the morning I'd be on that train to Coney Island.
So this film came out in 1969. It is directed by Michael Findlay, written by Michael Findlay. It stars Michael Findlay, and also, which is probably my favorite casting of anyone in this entire film, Earl Hindman. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, it's probably because you don't know the name of the guy who played Wilson on Home Improvement, but you do now.
Because this came out in 1969. So, and at that point, obviously people were able to kind of push the boundaries on what was allowed, because just a few scant years before, you couldn't show any lower frontal nudity of either gender. And by 1970, you had the first legal explicit pornography or pornographic film with Mona. So that's the thing. Like, we're right on the cusp of explicit sex being legal to show in film. There is some rather implied insertion that is very disturbing, especially for those of us whose least favorite vegetable is featured in it, i.e. me, and it's corn. Gross. But but that's the beauty.
So speaking of corn cobs, Mike, what did you think of The Ultimate Degenerate?
Did you know that we've actually talked about a movie that has Earl Hindman in it?
I did. Yep, I sure did. Yeah, Parallax.
Deputy Red. Yeah,
that's where I met current co-host of Scary Stories We Tell podcast, Jess Byard. That's the movie that we met on the Projection Booth podcast of. Yeah.
Yep, and he was also Mr. Brown in The Taking of Pelham 123. And if you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend it.
I haven't.
Well, there you go. Don't watch the one with Lick My Bunghole Motherfucker. Don't watch the John Travolta one. Watch this one. Or don't watch the one with Vincent D'Onofrio. Just watch the one with Walter Matthau. You'll
Lick My Bunghole?
Yeah, that's one of the classic John Travolta lines from the remake of Taking of Pelham 123. Tony Scott at his finest.
What a classic line.
I ducked your question, though. What did I think of The Ultimate Degenerate? I liked it more the second time than the first time. It's very interesting the way that the filmmaking is done. I have some theories as to maybe this wasn't all shot for one project because of the way that they kind of tie some stories together. Man, that MOS was getting to me after a while, but otherwise, yeah, I didn't mind this movie. I found some of it actually to be pretty enjoyable, especially all of the Bruno scenes.
Why did you pick Ultimate Degenerate?
Well, it's funny because for the past several years, I've become a very big Michael Findlay fan, and I've always been like a fan of like sexploitation genre and roughies. But when you watch enough of them, and then you watch some of Michael's stuff, there's a clear difference. And retrospectively, I probably should have picked Take Me Naked. or 1,000+ years over this one. But I still have such a huge soft spot for Ultimate Degenerate, probably because it was my first Michael Findlay film. But his stuff, you don't really get to see it as much in this one, but he tends to have like some great, well, you do have a little bit of this, like great florid dialogue and some insane, like insano pulp extremism. Like people kind of forget, like men's magazines and detective magazines in the 60s and 70s got completely bonkers, just over the top. And so you have that, but then you have like some really great framing and lighting and shadows and creativity, which the great photography is thanks to Roberta Findlay, Michael's then wife, who of course later on would become a director in her own right. And I find him a compelling presence. Like anytime I see him on screen, and he's always playing a villain, which is awesome. Now this is just a good little prelude to his ultimate role, which is his Richard Jennings in the Flesh trilogy, which I highly recommend. And to my knowledge, maybe the very first instance of having a reoccurring, like, non-supernatural horror character. Because, I mean, those films are totally, like, proto-slasher films. But, you know, at that point, the only people that were really kind of doing, with some exceptions, slasher films were, like, the Italians with Giallos. So, I just find them really fascinating. As far as Ultimate Degenerate, the reason I recommended it is that was the first one that wasn't the Flesh trilogy that came to my mind, because the title alone is such a great title. The Ultimate Degenerate. Like, it just brings to mind, like, ooh, like, what kind of, like, carnival horror show of depravity am I going to see? So yeah, I mean, it's, Mike's completely right about the sound. I don't know how much of that it was the original intent, because with some of these films, like the prints that got rescued are not going to be the most optimal ones, and sometimes they're incomplete. Just because, I mean, nobody really thought in terms of film preservation. And I mean, in the 60s, even with like quote unquote, like mainstream or legitimate films, people weren't thinking in terms, and especially for anything that played a grindhouse, which was viewed as kind of throwaway culture.
You're telling me that in 1969, filmmakers weren't worried about the Findlay cut of The Ultimate Degenerate?
No, because they were Philistines. That's why.
Oh, okay.
And
how much money do you think it would take to get the Findlay cut ready to watch in theaters? Like $30 million or... Yeah, I mean, you know, when you look at a film like this, like you mentioned, Heather, with the lack of preservation, and to Mike's point, this film in and of itself is hard to watch at times because of just some of the technical aspects of it. Like you said, Mike, it does kind of feel pieced together from other things. Which is fine. I mean, look, realistically, I didn't watch this film. I'm not sure I would have watched this film for its plot anyways. It's an interesting film. It's got some interesting scenes, and it definitely has a scene, like Heather mentioned, with corn that does for chicken legs for Killer Joe that corn does for this movie.
Ugh. At least it wasn't cream corn, though. That would be the ultimate depravity.
I'm not even sure. Like a funnel and like a hose. Yeah.
That is from hell. That is straight up Garmin Bosia. The devil himself wouldn't touch it.
But, I mean, it's an interesting film. I mean, again, to, Father Malone's point and Jess's point and Richard's point and everybody who's been on this month's point, these movies feel like an exploitation movie that is missing something in a way. This one less so. Like, when we were watching Vixen or She-Mob, they felt like a movie that's like, okay, all this nudity, but like, is something going to happen? And like you expect, like with a horror movie, that there's going to be somebody running out from the shadows, or there's going to be some sort of intrigue, but no, it's just a lot of sex and a lot of sex and nudity, which again, that's what the genre promises, so it delivers. But if you're a fan of other exploitation genres, you are expecting something else in a way, and you don't get it, you just get the sex. So this film actually offers a little bit more, which is refreshing. It kind of verges on horror towards the end.
Oh, it completely verges on horror. Like, you have this great, which is actually probably my favorite sequence in the film, is the kind of the dream hallucinatory sequence. And you have this absolutely iconic shot of Michael Findlay as the rich eccentric in a wheelchair Spencer, which would not be which you also see him in a wheelchair in the Flesh trilogy at some point. So it's kind of a reoccurring theme there. And he's got like a skull and he's smirking, and there's just, it's so, like, I don't know, like phantasmagorical almost. It's so like crazy. And that's what the reason I actually got into the genre too, is that I can see why you and the other guests got that from some of those films. Though man, there's a lot that happens in Russ Meyer's movies.
Oh, I think Vixen I think is the least offender of the bunch. But talking about something like She-Mob,
I love She-Mob. I will, come on, man. Big Shim? Big Shim?
I mean, Big Shim's the best part of that movie, for sure.
Well, I mean, she's like torturing dudes with her like pointy metal bra. That's fucking awesome. Like, that should be in every movie. But that's the thing. That's one reason I got into these films, is that there's a lot of little like surprising things. Like, yes, there's nudity. Yes, there's simulated sex. At this era, usually very simulated because of laws. But they kind of almost sometimes add to the surrealism. Like, I didn't mind some of the weird audio stuff and the weird cuts in this one, because to me the film's already is almost like this weird horned up nightmare dream that it almost to me kind of added to it. I just kind of, granted I'm biased, but also with some films, especially like with the super low budget cinema, I think sometimes there's a matter of just going in for the ride. If you're wanting something that's completely technically perfect, then you can go watch a Hollywood movie. That's not why you kind of watch these films, I think, to some extent.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, the part of watching this film is the fact that you can literally find it on archive.org. Maybe not this one specifically, but I think almost all the other ones this month, you can find them. They're, free to the public, right? I mean, you can watch them wherever, whenever, as long as you have an internet connection. So there's an appeal there in and of itself, because there's something kind of exciting watching a film that's, in the public domain now.
Well, actually, of all those, Vixen is in a weird legal thing because of all of Russ's stuff, say for for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls in 7 seconds, or 7 minutes, but, 7 seconds, I think, was that Luke Perry movie.
Yeah, 8 seconds.
8
seconds.
7 minutes, but the rest of those, actually, Something Weird Video have those. So I don't know if they're technically public domain. So
well, I can tell you with absolute certainty, Vixen is on YouTube in its entirety.
Oh wow, well, I'm fine with it because honestly, like, the estate has done nothing to preserve Russ's filmography, and all of his non-major studio stuff is out of print, which is a fucking crime. That is ridiculous, but that's we could probably get that horrible remake of Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 on Blu-ray, but we can't get any of Russ's most of his filmography. So,
and that is a shame. That's a real shame.
It is. I shudder to think what kind of state those prints are getting in. But so hopefully things are getting better. But with the rest of them, I would highly encourage any listeners to check out Something Weird Video, because that's where I certainly got my copy of She-Mob and pretty much any of the main Michael Findlay titles.
And, again, like you said, I mean, the thing about this cinema that is unfortunate is the lack of kind of care given to it past when it came out. I mean, look, this might not be your genre. This might not be the thing that you're into. This might not even be something that has any remote interest to you at all. But I would say, I don't know where y'all fall on this, but I would say that there is a level of importance to this kind of cinema as well, because it was trailblazing for the time. Whether or not we find it interesting or exciting or narratively compelling in 2020 isn't exactly the point, right? I mean, that's kind of beside the point with something like a sexploitation film from the late 60s.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing too, is that I think people tend to get kind of like a pie-eyed view of the past, like, cause, mainstream culture always kind of sugarcoats the past to some degree. It's like, oh, if it's the 50s, it's a more innocent time. You hear that shit a lot. And it's like, no, people just things were just more out in the open. And the thing I love about exploitation film, is even deep back to the 20s, is it shows that, no, I mean, guess what? As soon as man invented a camera, somebody was conning, well, hopefully not conning, but getting somebody to get naked in front of it. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's legal, of course. But like, it's kind of a nice way to be like, no, 50s and 60s, there's, this culture was always there. And I think the cool thing about, to me, though, the 60s, why that bloomed, it wasn't just because of the opening of mores, like social mores, but also you had a lot of like filmmakers kind of be like, how can I kind of take some of this format? Because I mean, it's going to make money. And if you're like a struggling filmmaker who doesn't have any connections, I mean, you're more likely to get into making an exploitation film than, say, your big budget art house film that you want to make. So you see kind of cool stuff, and you see stuff that you wouldn't normally expect, not even just with the lurid subject matter, but also with framing, and even just sometimes some of the just borderline just like surrealism with human characters. Like some like people that just act like nobody acts like this in real life.
So we've got Maria Curtis, who is bored, and does she live with another woman? Is that what's going on? Like her lover, possibly?
Her roommate and lover, Tammy.
Okay. And Maria is played by Uda Eriksson, and I don't imagine that they shot this without sound because of any sort of accents or anything, but that adds to the surrealism that you're talking about as well, Heather, this whole idea that everybody is dubbed and nobody's voice seems like it's coming out of their body. I mean, the lips match pretty well in a lot of cases, but in other cases it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't ever hit me right that some of these voices are coming out of some of these mouths. And then, Michael Findlay, his voice is fantastic, and him playing this twisted villain in the wheelchair who has put an ad in the paper, and what's he do? He's got a strip club, but he's also got like a sex club upstairs, and so it's like kind of this weird combined business where it feels like girls are just having sex with each other at all times, and if they're not having sex with each other on stage, then they're having it upstairs.
Yes, due to this is I love this so much. Due to a aphrodisiac that is his own concoction.
My own concoction. Yes. I love that line.
Oh my gosh, Michael! That is the thing. My one complaint about this film: there should have been more Michael Findlay dialogue. Because that's a hallmark of so many of his films. Like, there was one of his films where he literally says, "Dance for me, you strange whore." It's so good. But yes, his homemade aphrodisiac, which works. Like, I thought that was kind of a cool twist, because you almost expect it to end up being like heroin or something, and it's going to go down some darker path, and instead it's like, nope, these girls are just really, to quote one of them, tuned up.
I thought it was heroin, or like it feels like towards the end he's got control over them.
Yeah, they seem pretty active for heroin addicts, though.
That's true.
I like how that's the issue. They seem like a bunch of active heroin addicts.
Yeah, I mean, heroin's not really a drug you're going to be all like, oh, let me put on some high heels and let's go have a bunch of lesbian sex. You know, it's,
Well, speak for yourself.
I'm not done heroin, so maybe, I don't know, but maybe it's that black tar.
Yeah.
I haven't done heroin or lesbian sex, so I can't, speak to either of those.
I do appreciate that there's a performance in this film. I mean, obviously, look, Michael Findlay directed and wrote it, so he wants to put his best foot forward with the film. But like you mentioned, Heather, he is absolutely the best part of this movie. And he knows it, too. I mean, he knows that he's hamming it up and really going for it. And when an actor knows it, that's when it's even better, because they know that they're able to really command their presence on screen and really just steal every scene that they're in.
Oh, and he does. I mean, in everything. Because I've even seen, I would actually say his technical best film, even though it's credited to Jack Brofman, but Michael pretty much directed this horror film called Janie, and he has a cameo in it. He's literally in it for like 2 minutes, and he plays like this cranky neighbor in his boxers and a bathrobe. And it's like, but that's like my favorite. It's like, oh my God, he's so good. Like, can I just have a whole movie of Michael Findlay in his boxers and bathrobe yelling at the neighbors, But, he's so great. And actually, I really like Uda Eriksson, who was she was definitely a semi-regular in Michael's other films, and was I think, definitely one of the more memorable actresses of the New York sexploitation scene. I don't know if she actually was Swedish. It was very common for people not to use the real names.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, that's which makes researching and writing about them a little tricky.
I'm sure.
But she's great. I've always liked her. She's had such a great face. There's these shots when she arrives to Spencer's house where they take her to the quote unquote full-fledged theater, which apparently at one point they do later on. You do see a stage, but for this scene you see these three fully naked girls dancing around to some amazing music. That's the other thing about Michael's movies, is they're always a great mix of like really almost Wagnerian sounding classical music at times to like almost like garage rock meets Nuggets, meets, Spencer Davis band. Like, it's like the soundtrack's so good. And these girls are dancing. There's these lights flashing on them. And it looks like they're in a burned out basement. It looks like a snuff film waiting to happen, which adds to it, just adds to the whole thing. But these shots of Uda's face as her character, as Maria's looking on, kind of curious and kind of into it, definitely. But they're just great shots. I actually think that's some of my favorite camera work in this film. Is sometimes it's just the shot of the faces, like Michael's face. He has such a great face, and Uda has a great face.
So he's got this right-hand man, Earl Hindman, who's playing Bruno, credited here as Leo Hines. And Bruno, he seems to do everything for him, but then he's got like his own ulterior motives, right? Like towards the end, does he want to kill Spencer, the Michael Findlay character? He definitely seems to have it out for him, yeah. But then he also allows us, and the part that I was making allusions to earlier is that at one point he is telling a story, Bruno is telling a story, and it just seems to take us into like what feels like it might have been part of another movie, though I think that Findlay is still in a wheelchair, so maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was actually intended to be in this, but it just felt like using this voiceover is a way to narrate our way into another scene that doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the film. And I think that's the corn cob scene that we were talking about.
I think so. So there is a scene in the film where a woman is sticking, I wouldn't say jamming, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of force. A woman is inserting corn cobs into another woman, and which orifice we're not sure, but it's below the waist under a skirt. And there's more than a couple corn cobs.
Oh, it's a whole,
it's a
bushel? Yeah.
Total bushel.
It's enough for a family of 4, and then some.
Rose.
It's like you're getting ready for that 4th of July cookout, you know?
You're like doing like a crawfish boil and you're just putting them in the pot. You're like, does everyone need one, or is one person going to need more than one? All right, we'll just make it 2 for each person.
Well, thank Yahweh there were no mud bugs in this movie.
Oh, God in heaven.
I do think it should be, because I'm going to assume that anybody listening to this, most of you probably haven't seen this film yet.
And I'm not sure they're going to after hearing about a woman having corn cobs in her orifice.
If people want to be really offended, just watch the news, okay? Like, there's way more.
Oh, I agree.
This world has way more offensive stuff than a movie that is fictional. And,
that did not happen, not real.
But the great thing is the build up to the corn cobs, because you have like this motif of Spencer very glumly eating dinner at this Baroque table, and one night he demands a tray of corn cobs, and then this one girl played by Janet Benzay, who was also in the Amira Brothers, some of their early films, and of course they worked a lot with Michael and Roberta, and she's great, and she does this like dance, and it's ridiculous because she's like totally trying to like kind of nibble on this cob and lick on it, and the character, the narrator, Bruno, even mentions like he doesn't say pronounce it phallus, it's like phallus.
Yeah, it is weird.
That's a weird.
Yeah, there are some strange pronunciations in this. It's worse than an episode of You Must Remember This.
Hey, Tim, you got any phalluses in there? Any phalluses on your side of the fence, Tim? Phallus.
But it's just, you realize there's a reason why you don't see a lot of corn cobs in erotica, because even though because it's not a sexy vegetable, it's gross.
It's not a sensual vegetable.
No, it is not sensual. It's not as sensual either, because it's empty calories. Much better off having some greens. But I guess having a woman do a sexy dance with kale or collard greens is not. It's something.
I tell you what, though, I think that's a scene I would have liked to have seen, a woman just shoving bundles of collard greens up someone. I mean,
Jesus, I was just thinking sensual rubbing. I wasn't thinking insertion.
I thought we were doing a 1-to-1 comparison here.
No, but then the implication with the stage though is that it's mimed, because even the narrator says it's mimed. So, but she is putting a lot of corn up there, and also, this is not the first time such a potential felonious act has happened. I don't know about state laws with vegetables, but in Curse of Her Flesh, there is a scene where a woman gets caught being in a stag loop called, I believe, squash fever. And
no. I like squash too much.
It's implied that she is violated with the butternut squash.
Oh, come on. Oh, I thought you were going to say a kabocha squash. That's a terrible joke because a kabocha is like a giant squash.
Are those ones that look like flying saucers?
Yeah, those are the really big ones. I don't think that's
possible. If it is, I don't want to see it. Hell no. Jesus, what's wrong with you, Chris?
I mean, look, here's the thing about this scene in this movie. If you're going to tell someone about this movie, is this not the scene you tell them about?
You probably at least want to give them a heads up.
Like, for me, and I know myself, Mike, and I have differing opinions on him, but I don't know how you feel about him, Heather, but, like, for me, the scene with the corn cobs in this movie is like telling someone about the donkey show in Clerks 2. Like, you have to see it to believe what they're doing, because you're not going to understand it otherwise. It's one of those things where I was shocked when I saw it, because I had no frame of reference that there was going to be corn cob insertion. None. Zero.
I think if we can safely say this, the first time anybody has evoked a Kevin Smith movie in the same breath as a Michael Findlay movie. I feel like that's a safe assertion. As opposed to a safe insertion, which is definitely not what's going to happen if you use a corn cob. So everybody listening, this is just a movie. Don't try to replicate it. Ladies, you could get a bad, like, kind of infection of some kind. Don't do it.
And also, if you're that desperate, good Lord.
Go to adamandeve.com or something.
This is not a plug for adamandeve.com.
No.
Go to adamandeve.com and use the code CULTURECAST for 25% off your first order. We'll also throw in 5 gifts for you and your lover. I feel like they should have sponsored this month with the amount of sex and nudity and, no. See, here's the thing. This is the first movie I can think of where, like, a true lascivious act is taking place.
What a great word that is.
I know, but like she-mob, there was a feminization, but I mean, that's not terribly lascivious, and frankly, I would say not lascivious at all. But with this, like, no one in their daily life is inserting corn cobs into each other. But again, I haven't been to Western Nebraska that often, so I couldn't tell you.
That's what that Springsteen album's really about. Not really, but no, I mean, but Vixen, she makes out with she does like this make-out dance with a fish.
I mean, she also does fuck her brother in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, Vixen's pretty lascivious.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I love it, Chris. You're like, it's fair.
Yes, I don't know. Like, the way I look at it with this movie, like, there's lascivious acts of like a taboo nature, and then there's lascivious acts of just like an absurd nature. And this is like absurd.
It's complete Dada. Like, it's really just, this is just a surrealism for surrealism's sake, and I approve. And it makes it even weirder, like, when it kind of veers into a roughy territory, when all of a sudden which granted, we don't even know if this for sure happens, because this is all through the narrator, who has, as you guys mentioned, an ulterior motive. Bruno has an ulterior motive, but he tells, Maria about how, Spencer went too far, and he was taking pictures of a girl, and he wanted her to look like she was in pain, and he starts attacking her with a clothespin, which, that was hilarious, because
yeah. I had to turn down the volume quite a bit, because the squeals in this movie were really good.
Mike, I think I need to hear you say the squeals in that movie were real good just one more time.
That's what rewind is for.
Yeah, boy. Just leave that thing on loop on repeat. I just like the way they squeal.
And I think that needs to be the next Bite Squad commercial, where that little Bite Squad girl goes to the door and she hears the screaming, and Mike, you go to the door. Hello.
I like it when they squeal.
Oh my God.
As kind of differing in opinion as you might have on these films, there is one thing I can say more or less with absolute certainty. They are pretty fun to watch. And they're not a big time commitment either. They're, hour and 10 minutes. They breeze by pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially of this era, to find a sexploitation film that's longer than 90, not very common at all. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of a nice little breezy introduction to the underbelly of American cinema. but that's the thing. The underbelly's got gems. And I definitely think, I wouldn't say this is a perfect gem. It's not a film of the Findlay catalog I would totally be ride or die about. I do love it. And I'm glad, Chris, I want to say thank you both for coming on this Michael Findlay journey with me. And Chris, thank you for letting me suggest films to you. That was a trust exercise, so I hope
Well, I mean, you know, again, look, I have always been of the mindset that you more or less can't, within reason, have an opinion on something, an educated opinion on something, unless you watch it. And how do we find educated opinions? Well, by watchings. So I had never seen Sexploitation, and Mike knows this. I'm game for anything for the most part, you know.
Oh, he sure is.
Boy, talking about corn cobs. What about eggplants? Big ones.
Oh my
But
Are you reading your text out loud again?
Oh god.
Texts between Mike and I late at night are very, very raunchy. What are you wearing? Nothing. Just some corn cob. But, you know, I mean, these movies are a lot of fun. You know, again, I didn't go into this month thinking, I can't wait to see cinematic masterpieces. I went into this month thinking, like, I've never seen this genre before, and I'm gonna take the good with the bad. There was some good, and there was some bad, and there was some corn cobs and assholes, and, you know, you take the good with the bad with the corn cobs, so...
Yeah, if you take the good, you take the bad, and there you have the facts of life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say, though, the thing that does bum me out about this movie was reading about Michael Findlay. Whew, boy. Talk about a rough way to go.
Yeah, and so young. I mean, that's
Right.
that's the thing, is that it's, you know, it's you know, to give like a brief explanation, you know, for anybody listening, like there was that it was a pretty infamous helicopter crash on the Pan Am building, and Michael was killed in that, and
It's you're being nice at how bad it was.
well, I don't know, you know, it's like, especially,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too morbid, because I you know, I think it's better to,
Let's just say
you
the
know,
helicopter didn't crash, it fell.
yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's real. It's all, I mean, again, like Heather said, we're not here to talk about the gory details, but it's almost very similar to what happened to Vic Morrow, in a way. And I think it's really unfortunate, because who's the blaxploitation director we were talking about that passed away from airplane crash as well, in Kenya, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember who that was.
God, we just talked about.
Is that Gordon? No.
It was for. We just
Gordon
talked about
Parks
this.
Sr.?
Yes. Wait.
Or Gordon Parks Jr.?
I think it was Gordon Parks Jr.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
You know, I don't know, man. If you're in the movie industry, maybe don't get in airplanes or helicopters. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's unfortunate because, again, you know, it's, you know, to your point, Heather, like, he was 40 something, 44 something,
Yeah.
or like 40.
Well-
like, Jesus, good Lord, like, talk about just who knows where he could have gone with his career.
Well, especially because he had been working on this very like innovative type of 3D like film for film, and he was actually going overseas to, you know, to kind of show people. And I guess 2 films over in Asia were made with a similar technology, but it was like, Rialto Reports got a much more detailed article in this, because I'm going to blank on some of the finer details. But that's the thing, like, Michael was like somebody who was very, you know, loved the process of filmmaking and was very curious. And it sounded like he was the kind of guy that if you gave him a device, he would kind of tear it apart to see how it worked, so he could put it together. Like, he had kind of one of those minds. And, what's even more sad is, like, there's a number of his films that are lost. And to me, the mind boggles to think of any movie, genre be damned, that was made in the 60s and 70s being lost. Like, I always grew up knowing that a lot of silent films were lost because of, you know, either people really mishandling those prints, or, you know, because sometimes the prints would literally explode, because of the nitrate. But to think of films that aren't even, you know, at this point now, they're, you know, 50 or 60 years old, but that's not old at all. And they're gone. They're just gone. So I mean, hopefully it'll turn out, but I don't know. That's a shame. That's one of the reasons why I'm one of the many reasons I'm really big into preservation. You know, we have to take care of our culture. On the Culture Cast, and Roberta is still with us, and, you know, but she's definitely, seems like she's not very proud, I think, of almost any of her filmmaking, which is a shame, because, you know, Roberta has a lot of talent, but it doesn't sound like she has like the highest opinion of especially the stuff she made with Michael, so, which is a shame. But I don't know, it's kind of like when bands break up, I guess. You know, if you're in a relationship with somebody and the band breaks up, I don't know, you know.
You're kind of like, I don't want to touch any of this anymore. Like, no, thank you.
I think that's the coolest thing, though, about this, about these films, especially because, I'm actually really kind of surprised to see that nobody brought up, like, the topic of misogyny, because that seems to be, like, the big thing that I see people kind of attack this genre for. And I imagine Michael Findlay, especially with his stuff being kind of more in the roughy, would get that. But I feel like this film and a lot of his films are like in such a weird kind of surrealistic but also nihilistic universe where everybody's kind of shady. Like, gender be damned. It's not like the men are going to come off any better. In fact, they're coming off a lot worse than most of the women.
Well, it's also exploitation. Like, I kind of assume that there will be boundary pushing in exploitation. So, like,
true.
There's a misogynist. Like, it's a movie with corncob in assholes. Like, what is the exploitation? The misogyny here is, like, that's what we're worried about.
No, there's no mention of specific anal interactions with the corncob.
That's not where I thought they went.
I mean, the way I looked at it is at some point one's going to be full.
Oh my god!
I'm sorry.
I think you think too much, dude.
There's 5 or 6 corncobs in there. I'm sorry. Look, you present a scenario without explanation, the mind does tend to wander. Isn't that what they always say about horror? The scarier thing is what you don't see versus what you do see.
That's why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was so effective.
Mike. Wow. Oh, goddamn. I just like how you deadpanned that. Get out.
I know. I literally have
Bravo's
cartoon
top
hearts.
100 scariest moments.
I have cartoon hearts above my head right now, Mike.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Well, what did you guys think about, there's a great fire dance where Spencer has one of the girls do this very, like, at times, it almost looks like she's, like, summoning a spirit or something in front of this, like, pot of fire. Like, what did you guys think of that sequence?
I mean, he has a very... Michael Findlay had a very deft eye for composition of scenes and of, like, composing a shot in an interesting way. And I think that scene is one of the better crafted scenes in the film.
It's really beautiful. Like, I remember being really stunned by that. Yeah, because it's really very arty. And that's, and some of his films have more of that than others. This one has a bit of mix of it. There seems to be a lot of whipped cream. I don't know if they got a sponsorship by Ready Whip.
There's definitely a lot of whipped cream in this. And yeah, we were making quite a few jokes in my house about that.
All that cream.
What really gets me is when it's on the couch, though, and I'm just like, how are you going to get that out? Come on.
Oh, God, I was thinking the same thing. Like, seriously, even rewatching it, I'm like, oh, God, guys, put a blanket or something.
Yeah.
Towels down.
Dairy doesn't come out of nylon and pleather like that. Come on, guys. I mean, you would think in this, like, den of sex and depravity, they would be taking care of their...
They should have Naga hide.
Yeah, come on. Your upholstery, I mean, you're getting all sorts of things on it, and you're just gonna rub it in there? Come on. You are truly degenerates if you put whipped cream on the hide.
Don't take a black light to that place.
Oh,
the ultimate
God.
Degenerates they are.
You take a black light to that place, it's gonna look like the end of Close Encounters. It's gonna think you, like, died and ascended to heaven. It's gonna be so bright. Well, this film has a twist. Do we want to go into the twist?
I don't see how we can ruin it for anybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, how could we not?
In case anybody, no whining about having a movie that
if there are, direct them at Heather Drain. Direct them at Heather.
Don't. We're good at spoilers. But, so we find out that, yes, Bruno basically has manipulated the situation to have poor Spencer, because it means no more Michael Findlay in the movie, and that makes me sad, murdered by Maria, and so he could take over this rotted house with his gay lover?
I guess
so. It ends pretty abruptly with that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like there's really no comeuppance.
Goodbye, lover. Bum, bum, bum.
And his lover keeps calling him Bruni. He's like, oh, Bruni. Like, it's a little on the stereotypical side, but Bruno is, he doesn't play into the gay stereotype at all. So there's the twist.
We never would have pegged him.
That's right. He's like, I kicked all those whores out. Now the house is ours.
You might not have pegged him, Mike, but that can't be you can't speak for all of us, okay? It's bizarre, but again, like, you know, when we talked about Vixen essentially seemed ashamed of the lesbian scene. In this film, they revel in it. And it's interesting to see another gay character in this film, you know, portrayed in, I wouldn't say a negative light, but like kind of a morally ambiguous light, I guess.
That's fair. I mean, honestly, I think everybody in this entire movie's universe is morally ambiguous.
Yeah, I know, because, like, Michael Findlay's character is such a dirtbag that, like, is it really the end of the world if he dies? Like, probably not. But, yes. Like, you're a dirtbag for killing him, I guess. You know.
Well, some of the line Bruno has, I forget where he walks in and the girls are doing a lesbian photo shoot, and he says something like, God, every time I walk around this place, you girls are always munching on each other. He says it like that. Like, I mean, maybe that should have been our clue.
It sounds like it should have been, yeah.
Because I don't think I've ever met a heterosexual man who would be like, oh, gross, hot women naked together. No.
Judging by some of the people I know, when you go, that girl's a lesbian, they go, oh, she's hot, bro. I'm just like, she's gay, though. Yeah.
The last thing she wants is your dick, sir.
Yeah,
calm down.
She is gay. Do you get that? Or they're still hot? Yeah, okay, but like, gay.
Actually, I will say, I like the fact that there is one, we don't really get to meet her as a character, but there is a lesbian in this film that looks butch, and not like cute. That's what I think, because I remember seeing, like, I had a friend that was into the L world, and their butch character was still kind of pretty in a femme way. I'm like, I've known some butches, okay? I've like seen that representation.
Heather's just giving all these like perfect gems of quotes. I've known some. Well,
I have, you know, and that's awesome. Like, it's good to see like the butch community get some representation, because usually, especially things made for heterosexual audience, like all of the lesbians look like, you know, Marilyn Chambers or Jenna Jameson, and it's like, well, there's some femme lesbians, but not all lesbians, you know.
No, yeah, for sure.
Hashtag not all lesbians.
Damn it.
I was about to say, like, you know, I have friends who are lesbians. I have had friends who are lesbians, and they have all been of the butch variety. So yeah, it's a weird underrepresentation that, like, I mean, obviously pornography underrepresentation completely. They're not all Big Shim.
Oh, but they should be.
Big Shim, I mean.
Big Shim's so good. I love her.
Good old Big Shim.
She, with her cigar and just her leather trousers. She's hard
her shotgun.
And she's all hard bitten. Yeah, like that's a woman who was not afraid to stab a man with her bra.
Or shoot her own woman.
Yeah, don't cross Big Shim. Now, see, that could have been the ultimate crossover sequel, where Bruno has to end up atoning for his sins, because Big Shim, you find out Maria was one of her girls.
Oh, God. Oh, see, the ultimate crossover has begun.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. My other dream crossover would be Michael Findlay's character from the Flesh trilogy, Richard Jennings, who at one point in the third film says, I want to murder every woman on the planet. He literally says that. Have him meet with Sherry Cafaro from the Ginger trilogy. And you would have, like, the cult film. It's like Godzilla versus King Kong.
But with less jamming of the trees down each other's throats.
Maybe. Well, no, probably not. But it would be epic. So, just be a lot of hateful dialogue. A lot of nudity and a lot of insano worldviews. It's good. I think that's what we need. You know, like, reality, especially, you know, we've all been getting such a face full of reality right now that's been a little less than optimistic. Sometimes it's fun just to throw on something that's just completely balls to the walls, bonkers, you know? Just revel in it.
I am inclined to agree with you. I think the world could use more films like this. But, you know, here's the other thing that we didn't really talk about this time, but we talked about on previous episodes is, in this day and age, you could just watch porn. And, like, so it almost feels like the genre is kind of ignored because the assumption is you're watching it to get off. And you see what I'm getting at here, you know. It's unfortunate that that's kind of the position that this genre has been put in, because it is, I guess you could get off to this film.
Boy.
I'm saying I guess you could. Like, I'm not advocating it, but a theoretical situation could arise where you could get off to a film like this one.
True. I think that's kind of one of the things that I love about like, a lot of these films, though, is that, I mean, there is that element, but with some of them, there's some of these films that are so freaking weird and so amazingly weird that it's like, they're total no-hatters, which I know I've explained this phrase to you, Mike, I think on an earlier projection brief. Have I explained the no-hatter thing to you, Chris?
No, but I have a mental guess of what you're getting at.
Well, in the amazing book Grindhouse by Eddie Mueller, they mentioned that like distributors in the 50s and 60s had the benchmark for if a sexploitation film was good, meaning if it made money. If a movie is a three-hatter, which means a guy has covered his area with his hat and spanked it 3 times in the movie, then it's you're going to get your money back. You're going to make bank. If a movie is a no-hatter, then that's kind of my sweet spot are the no-hatters, where it's like, you're like, no way in hell did anybody masturbate in this movie. And just
that's the way I felt about Vixen. It's like, I felt like that movie existed for the purpose of getting off. But not this film.
No, my God. I think that's one of the reasons I love. I say that about Findlay's film. I do have a late friend who apparently did find parts of Curse of Her Flesh arousing, which is probably TMI. but yeah, I mean, but there's more substance to it. Like, I find current day pornography, I have no interest in it because it's just like meat grinding, you know? It's just, it's everything's kind of gone back to what it was in its original form, which was loops. It's just straight up sex, which, I mean, that's fine. I have no moral judgment on it, but I just think as a viewer, you know, I guess I'm like Murray Head in One Night in Bangkok, you know, I like my kicks above the waistline sunshine.
Do you think that sexploitation is a genre that could feasibly exist in 2020?
I don't think it ever exists like it did, because I don't think things from the past can ever be replicated in a pure way, because everything that is, you know, all art that's created in a timeline is a product of that timeline to some degree, just like we're all products of our environment to some degree. You know, part of what makes the sexploitation films of the 60s feel a little more tawdry and feel that kind of weird, delicious luridness about it is because you can feel the repression being unleashed from that culture of that era. We don't have that now because, like you said, anybody can go online and see, you know, hardcore pornography free. I do think there's been some interesting attempts. Excuse me. I know, like, of all people, like Fred Olin Ray, like in the early to mid-aughts, made a film like The Curse of the Erotic Tiki and The Ghost in a Teeny Bikini. And those are actually kind of throwbacks. They're pretty sexual, and it's almost porny, but there's also that attempt at kind of being like almost like having the cheekiness of like a nudie cutie. I wouldn't say it's totally successful, though, just because, you know, nudie cuties kind of had their charm because there is no sex in them. And there's not even really a sexuality in them.
Well, it's like all of Jim Wynorski's stuff for the last 20 years with all the Witches of Brestwick and all those. I mean, that Misty Mundane, I'm trying to remember what label she was on, but that was all like...
Oh, Seduction.
Hey, oh, God, those were terrible. Because it was just... but they were kind of a throwback to sexploitation films because it's like, we're almost being sexy, but not really, and we are terrible actors.
Yeah, but there wasn't really anything else to pull you. Because, like, that's the thing, even in some of the more, like, kind of grotty and not well-made movies of this era, like, there's still something kind of, like, you know, maybe it's because it's old enough to where you're getting a peek into a different time period, so there's that. But also, you know, yeah, those movies just, I don't know, I didn't feel like there was a lot of, not that I saw all of them, in fairness, I saw very few, but to me it just seemed very... like, you might as well just go for the whole hog and be porn. Like, because to me it felt more like kind of like bad pornography than it did good sexploitation. It didn't even feel like good pornography, you know, which does exist, obviously. But, yeah, I don't think so. Because, I mean, not in the classic sense. It's kind of like how rock and roll of the 50s, I mean, you could do somebody that emulates it, but it's never going to feel like it did. It's never going to be like what it was in the 50s. Like, things just change.
Yeah, it's like a riff. And that's kind of, I think, the conclusion that I would agree that, you know, I have personally come to as well, is that, you know, it can't exist in this form, but it can exist in a kind of a facsimile or a tribute or kind of a homage to it, but not in like you're going to see jiggling breasts on screen, like, You can watch that on your phone. Like, I don't... No, like, I don't think, like, I mean, there's even a reason that, like, theaters that show pornography don't exist anymore. Like, not in the way that they used to, you know.
Yeah, no, there's, the home video market definitely kind of put a damper in then with the internet. But I think it's also because, you know, like the type of pornography that's current, you know, you don't really have anything that's going to trend like you did with the porno chic era of the 70s. But that's when you had people like Damiano and, you know, Bradley Metzger and, you know, later on like Steven Stadion make films. Like those weren't really, some of those films I wouldn't call porn. I would just call them adult films because they're obviously made for adults, but they're a film. There's story, there's layer. Not everything is there just for somebody's masturbatory purposes.
Well, and that's, I mean, you know, that's the joke about pornography now, right? Is I watch porno for the stories.
Yeah, huck yuck.
I mean, hey, you know what? I don't know how many times the stepmom needs to get stuck in the dryer, but God, fix the fucking dryer already. Stop banging and fix the dryer. Like, it's that kind of stuff that, like you said, to your point, like, that is gone. And I don't even think that, like, I don't even know if that's a thing that exists now. Pornography with a plot.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really... I like to think it does. I'm not really up on it, to be honest, because I don't... You know what I mean? I don't really have an interest in trying to, you know, try and...
It's our next podcast. It's just called Pornos with Plots, ?
Mm-hmm.
Let's watch tons of porn and determine if they have plots or not.
Well, now I'm wondering, is this a thing for stepmothers to get stuck in a dryer? Is this... Is that a
again,
fetish?
I mean, again, like, the fetishization of step family in 2020
Oh,
is
good lord.
bizarre, to say the least.
That shit makes me want to set me on fire, and not in a hot way. I mean, like, literal, like, I'm protesting the Vietnam War fire.
Yeah, like, you know, because that's the thing, like, we're talking about this with, fetish softcore pornography or fetishization of sex in this film, and it's pretty mild. I mean, outside of the corncob thing, it's kind of mild, you know, it's light BDSM, it's lesbian sex, but in 2020, I mean, step family fetishization is just... Where it came from, I will never know, but it's apparently here to stay. So, cool. We went from sexploitation to, I want to bang my stepmom, so...
Who's stuck in a dryer.
Yeah, who's stuck in a dryer, or stuck under a bed, or stuck in the drain, or God knows what.
Why are they getting stuck?
Their boobs are too big.
Oh no!
Plot convenience.
I hate it when me jigglies get stuck in things.
Or one of them is my watch got stuck on the drum of the dryer. Like, get the fuck out of here,
man. Because people.
It's just again like it's just so stupid.
No, it's not stupid. It is vintage sexploitation films like the work of Michael Findlay.
No, I mean, again, this is, you know, I like this a lot. I enjoyed this for what it is. More so than almost everything this month.
Yay. I'm glad out of all of them, this is the one you liked. I kind of figured Vixen would be the big winner. Well, because, I mean, Russ is kind of...
There were two big winners in that movie. Get it?
I don't know what you mean by that, Chris.
I think he means Charles Napier's chin.
But he wasn't in Vixen.
Oh, he wasn't?
No.
Oh, shit.
He's in Super Vixens, which is amazing.
Oh, sorry. That's probably what I'm thinking of.
God, I love Super Vixens. Oh, sorry. And Charles Napier is amazing.
I think Richard Nixon was the real winner of Vixen.
He's the real boob. Those are the boobs in that movie.
What would you give the film out of 5, Mike?
I'd give it a 3 out of 5. I'd probably actually watch this again especially seeing this with an audience, I think would be pretty great.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I would agree with that 100%. What about you, Heather?
I would give it a 4.
Wow.
I'm Michael Findlay girl, ride or die. So this one isn't the best. That's why it's not. I wouldn't put it in the top tier, but I think it's a good introduction. I think if you like what you see with this film, it'll be enough to kind of whet your appetite and explore the rest of his amazing and very colorful filmography.
Sure. Yeah, I would give it like a 3.5. I mean, again, it's entertaining. It's got some genre to it in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I mean, Michael Findlay's performance and Earl Hindman's performance are both really good. So, you know, I like I said, I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed it. And for the month that it was in, it's definitely the standout. So, but we're not going to be talking about sexploitation in June. What are we going to be talking about? Here's the trailer.
Do you remember the first time your thoughts were turned to evil things?
He plies me with caresses, lustful, obscene. He enters my bed at night and takes from me that which is consecrated to my divine bridegroom, Jesus Christ.
And what form does this incubus take?
Talk!
Who is responsible for this evil possession? But of course I can prove nothing. This Mother Superior may be little more than a hysterical nun.
But if it is a genuine case of possession by devils, and if Grandier himself was proved to be involved, then yes, I think it bears investigation, gentlemen.
You've been a magician.
I'd commerce with devils.
You face eternal damnation.
Conjecture is useless. We need a professional witch hunter. We must send for Father Barre. No surprises for you.
His Majesty's triumphed again.
Beside the radiance of His Majesty.
I have been a man. I have loved women. I have enjoyed power.
That's right, in June we're going to be kicking off Just Buyer June with some Ken Russell movies. We're going to be talking about The Devils first. Controversial film, from what I've heard. I've not seen it, but I have heard that it is controversial. So, sure, great. Looking forward to it. I know everyone else is as well. Until then, where can people find you, Heather?
Well, you can find me on my website, which is mondoheather.com, and you can also find a number of my articles over at diaboliquemagazine.com.
What about you, Mike?
Well, you can find me over at the Projection Booth, which is available at projectionboothpodcast.com.
And as for myself, you can find me on Twitter at casualty_Chris. That's where I talk about all the podcasts that patreon.com/culturecast is where you can find our Patreon. $1 is all it takes to become part of the patrons. So there's that. Go ahead if that's your thing. Awesome. If not, I totally get it. Give us a good review on iTunes and Google. Every little bit helps to get our visibility up. As always, big thanks to Mike and Heather for joining me. Double thanks to Heather for programming this month. And we'll catch you on the next episode.